The Jamaican Maroons are a group of people who are descendants of West African slaves that escaped from the Spanish and British plantation owners in the 17th century. The Maroons fought fiercely for their freedom, and their resistance eventually led to the formation of an autonomous community in the rugged mountains of Jamaica. Today, the Maroons are recognized as one of the most significant cultural groups in Jamaica. The Maroons have their roots in the transatlantic slave trade. During the 17th century, the British and Spanish colonizers brought thousands of Africans to Jamaica to work on their plantations. These slaves were subjected to inhumane treatment, forced labor, and brutality. Despite the harsh conditions, many slaves rebelled and escaped into the rugged terrain of the Blue Mountains. These runaway slaves, known as Maroons, were skilled fighters and were able to survive in the mountains thanks to their knowledge of the terrain and hunting skills. The Maroons were organized into communities, each with its own leader or chief. They established their own laws, traditions, and culture, which was a mix of West African, European, and indigenous Jamaican influences. The Maroons also established trading relationships with the local indigenous communities, and this helped them to survive and thrive in the mountains. The Maroons' resistance to British colonialism began in the 18th century when the British sought to expand their control over the island. The Maroons, who had established themselves as a powerful force in the mountains, resisted the British attempt to conquer them. The British had sent troops into the mountains to capture the Maroons on multiple occasions. However, the Maroons were skilled fighters and they were able to evade the British troops and launch counterattacks. Despite these conflicts, there were also attempts at negotiating peace between the Maroons and the British. In 1723, a British governor named Nicholas Laws offered a peace treaty to the Maroons, which would recognize their independence and grant them land in the mountains. The Maroons initially rejected the offer, but they eventually came to the negotiating table. In 1728, a peace treaty was signed between the British and the Windward Maroons, who were led by a chief named Kojo. However, the British, under the rule of a new governor, Major General Robert Hunter, broke the treaty and began to encroach on the Maroons' land. They also captured Maroons and sold them into slavery, which provoked the Maroons to take up arms against the British. This ended up becoming the trigger that started the First Maroon War. Starting from 1728, fierce battles and skirmishes emerged due to the rising tensions between the Maroons, plantation owners, and political figures. The Maroons used guerrilla tactics to attack the British forces, and they were able to inflict heavy casualties on the British soldiers. The British, on the other hand, hampered by their lack of knowledge of the terrain, were unable to adapt to the Maroons' attacks.
Ambush. This is what the Maroons call the ancient art of camouflage. Such ingenuity that contributed to the military successes of the early Maroons. They were, after all, the first black guerrilla fighters in the New World.
In 1735, over 100 Leeward Maroon warriors, led by Kojo, conquered military barracks in western Jamaica. John Gregory, who became the new governor, had no choice but to tackle the problem of Maroon attacks. However, during this time, other prominent Maroon leaders, such as Nanny of the Maroons, along with Qual, who some believe to have been her brother, were causing a storm in the windward side of the island. In retaliation for the militia's occupation of Nannytown, Windward Maroon warriors launched assaults on Titchfield Fort in Port Antonio. In 1737, there were more Maroon attacks on estates in coastal areas, and Gregory began to consider offering peace terms to the Maroons. This finally became a reality upon the arrival of a new governor, Edward Trelawny, who offered peace terms to the Windward Maroons in 1739, as well as the Leeward Maroons in 1740. The Maroons' resistance to British colonialism was a significant moment in Jamaica's history. The Maroons were able to resist the British forces and preserve their freedom and culture.